If you think the world is safe just because the streets look calm, think again. Kidnipe isn't just a crime, it's a silent epidemic that moves in the shadows while the world sleeps. Before you enter this chilling story, hit subscribe so you never miss a life-saving story like this again. Aria had always believed her city was safe, a place where children played cricket in narrow streets, where vendors laughed with customers, and neighbors greeted one another like family. But everything changed the night her younger brother, Zion, disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only a school bag and a sense of dread that wrapped itself around her like chains she couldn't break. She remembered the moment she realized something was wrong. Zion was never late, never careless, never the type to wander off. And as the minutes stretched into hours, panic crawled into her bones while police officers scribbled notes and shrugged with rehearsed sympathy, treating her brother like just another missing case in a city overflowing with them. But Aria refused to let Zion become another file in a dusty cabinet, so she began her own investigation, combing through security camera footage, questioning shopkeepers, piecing together fragmented reports about a rising black market network called Kidnipe, known for trafficking children and harvesting organs for wealthy clients who hid behind the law's blind spots. One evening, exhausted and trembling, she found herself in a dimly lit cyber cafe where a hacker known as Zerobyte reluctantly agreed to help after hearing Zion's name because he too had lost someone to Kidnipe, and together they followed a digital trail buried deep inside the dark web, tracing coded advertisements that disguised children as deliverables, and marked their conditions in cold, clinical language that made Aria's stomach twist. And that was when Zerobyte uncovered an address, an abandoned textile mill on the outskirts of the city that had been repurposed as a transport hub for victims. But it was impossible to involve the police because Kidnipe had insiders everywhere, so Aria made the most difficult decision of her life. She would infiltrate it herself, armed with only a flashlight, a pocket knife, and her brother's photograph. She entered the mill at midnight, her footsteps echoing across hollow corridors filled with rusted machines and the faint smell of disinfectant, her heart pounding loud enough to drown out the distant humming of generators powering underground rooms. And as she moved deeper, she overheard men speaking in coded phrases about shipments arriving at dawn, which only pushed her forward with a boiling mix of fear and determination. Suddenly, she noticed a small locked door guarded by two individuals, and while hiding behind stacked crates, she saw them drag out a crying boy whose face streaked with dirt but whose resilience reminded her of Zion, igniting a fire inside her that refused to die. Zerobyte's voice crackled through her earpiece, guiding her to the mill's central security system, and with shaky hands she managed to cut power for 10 seconds, just long enough to slip past the guards and break into the restricted area where dozens of children were trapped behind steel bars, their eyes wide with terror and hope at the same time. But Zion wasn't among them, causing despair to claw at her throat until a tiny girl whispered that some children were taken to a separate room called the clean unit, and Aria knew instantly that she didn't have much time left as organ extractions usually took place before sunrise. Fighting back tears, she forced herself toward the clean unit, its door sealed with biometric locks that Zerobyte bypassed remotely. But as soon as she entered, she froze. There on a metal gurney lay Zion, unconscious, wires attached to his small body, machines monitoring every heartbeat, his face pale under harsh white lights, but alive. And that was enough for Aria to explode into action, rushing toward him before a masked surgeon entered, and without hesitation she lunged forward, slashing at the man's arm, sending instruments clattering to the floor, chaos erupting as alarms blared through the mill, alerting guards who stampeded toward the room. Zerobyte shouted directions in her ear, telling her where emergency exits were located, and Aria, carrying Zion's fragile body in her arms, sprinted through narrow hallways while gunshots echoed behind her, shattering pipes and sending sparks raining down. And just when she thought she would be cornered, the children she freed earlier created a distraction, blocking the guards by overturning metal carts and causing confusion long enough for Aria to break outside into the cold night air. She ran across the field behind the mill as Zerobyte remotely disabled exterior lights, giving her a veil of darkness to hide under until she reached the main road where a truck driver who had overheard the commotion stopped to help her. And together they rushed Zion to a small private clinic where a sympathetic doctor stabilized him while Aria watched with trembling hands, whispering prayers between gasps of relief and exhaustion. News of the raid spread like wildfire after Zerobyte leaked the entire evidence online, exposing Kidnipe's operations, identities of its clients, and the corruption embedded deep within the city's institutions, sparking nationwide outrage and forcing authorities to take swift action as raids swept across multiple districts, freeing hundreds of children and bringing perpetrators to justice. But for Aria, the true victory came 3 days later when Zion finally opened his eyes, weak but smiling, calling her name with a voice that made every bruise, every fear, every sleepless night worth it. And as she held his hand, she realized that the world would always have darkness, but ordinary people, people with courage stronger than fear, could still ignite a light powerful enough to break entire chains of evil, one child at a time. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Share it, comment your thoughts, and hit subscribe so you never miss another life-changing story. Your support helps more powerful stories reach the world, and together, we can keep that light burning.